off the air with Cole Thompson, who joins us on 365 Sports with Craig and Paul and David Smoak. Cole, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. With the way that the SEC is built, the incoming of Texas and Oklahoma, no divisions, can you really figure out who the conference champion is if the schedules are sometimes uneven?
Yeah, Smokey, it's challenging because if you definitely are going to have your favorites, naturally based off of what you do with the recruiting process and the transfer portal. I mean, when you look at Georgia, this is a team that feels like they were about ready. They feel like they've got the guy that's about ready to break even on blackjack table, and on his last hand he goes all in and then doubles down and then hits 21, then hits 21 again, then decides to watch the banker break and makes all their money back because they've revamped their entire roster overnight. But at the same time, it does feel more open than ever, even with two newcomers coming on in. Because the strength of schedule is going to play a major factor in all these teams and their ability to make it to the postseason. And at the same time, what you look at in terms of when you play certain games also really play a major dividend. I mean, I look at a team like Tennessee in week 2. They have to go travel to Charlotte, North Carolina to take on the NC State roster that kind of is flying underneath the radar with Dave Duran. They always have a great defense, and they're breaking in a new quarterback in an area where this is going to be a major test for them going into week 4 when they travel to Norman, Oklahoma, and it's a reunion for Josh Heupel. But that could be a game that ultimately determines could they make it to the college football playoff. It's a giant catechism of just chaotic craziness this year where you know that there are going to be some front runners, you know there's going to be some dark horses, and then I love the term coin flip teams because if that's how it feels with a lot of these programs that are 8-4, 9-3, maybe sneaking in as a backdoor 10-2 if one player breaks out. So it does feel like any given Saturday you can see that major upset. But also, naturally, there are some teams that are a little bit more well-equipped to contend in 2024 than ever before.
Cole, the Ole Miss boosters and NIL collective stepped up huge to help build that roster and do something that Ole Miss hasn't done in quite a long time, and maybe win the SEC. I mean, they have players all over the field. They've got a returning quarterback. The only place they might have downgraded is losing Quinshon Judkins at running back. Everywhere else appears to be veteran players that can really make plays. Not that this is do or die for Lane Kiffin, but is he ever going to be set up in a better situation than this, especially considering that Alabama is retooling after the Saban retirement?
No, it's really funny. I consider Lane Kiffin like that last cigarette you promise yourself, and then you go right back to it a week later. Like, you want to quit it, but you just can't let go of Lane. And right now, the way that his roster is constructed, it feels like he's all in. And the way that they talked about it this past year with everybody on staff, with Jackson Dart saying it's the last dance, with getting back Trey Harris, with getting back Peyton Preescorn. And then you hear the way they talk about the defensive line. They were all in on building their trenches, and they did a great job getting number 1 former overall defensive prospect Walter Nolan, getting Princely and Manley Ellen. They don't play Alabama this year. They don't have Texas A&M on the schedule. They don't have Tennessee on the schedule, so there won't be any mustard bottles thrown Lane Kiffin's way. And also, they really have their 2 trickiest games at home against Oklahoma and Georgia. So, yeah, it does kind of feel like it is one of those years where it's not do or die, where they have to win the division or they have to go to Atlanta, because they can still make the playoffs because of it's 12 teams. But you then wonder, well, how much more is it going to be? How much better can it get? Because you do feel like this is an 11-win roster. You do feel like this is a team that should compete for a national title. They have the 8th best odds in all of college football to compete for a championship this year. And that's saying something when you look back at the history of Ole Miss. Like, they used to be the laughingstock armpit of the SEC, and now they feel like even with the loss of Quinshon Judkins, they've made up for it in a running back by committee headlined by former Ole Miss running back that came back, Henry Parrish, where there really shouldn't be any fault, any concern, any question marks. They feel like they should be gung-ho at least making the playoff and then winning a playoff game or two for it to be a successful season and not hurt.
Cole, obviously there's been a massive shift with Saban's retirement nationally, but they're in the state of Alabama. It seems like it's been a little quiet. I know Hugh Freeze is still doing plenty of talking, but just in terms of kind of the expectations, they're sort of in the background here as of late. Do you expect an emergence from the Tigers and Hugh Freeze this season? If so, why? And if not, why not?
I think they're going to be better than what we're kind of giving advertised right now. Most people have them as about an 8-win team. I think if they go about 9-3. And the main reason why is because you do look at the quarterback situation. One of Freeze was recently on with WJOX talking about the $1 million quarterback issue. And to be fair, he didn't miss a beat. He was 100% correct to believe in Peyton Thorne, because you look at the quarterbacks that were on the market. How much do you feel like they are an upgrade over what you have currently in the locker room? And then also, how do you feel if you bring in a quarterback worth $1 million about the rest of your roster? Because it's one thing to be able to say, well, yeah, we get a quarterback that's better than Peyton Thorne, but he still has question marks with the wide receiver core. He still has a questionable defensive line. The offensive line couldn't add in a certain player because they had to give all the NIL funds to one name. And then you look at the roster in general. Peyton Thorne won the Peach Bowl with Michigan State with 2 1,000-yard receivers, with 2 quality running backs, with a good offensive line. And you kind of have that now in the Plains because if Keandre Lambert-Smith comes on over from Penn State, Cam Coleman is arguably the best wide receiver to walk through that building in over 2 decades. They have a good run game. They've upgraded the offensive line, and they're also allowing Freeze to call plays. To me, Auburn is the perfect coin flip team this year, where it could be a play or two in every matchup that is basically down to the wire, where if they hit and it lands on heads, they're going to walk away with a win. And if it lands on tails, they're going to easily drop a game. But they do feel more complete. They do feel like they've taken the necessary steps forward. And now that Freeze is the one calling the shots on offense, he's going to cater to what is Peyton Thorne's strengths. And also, if Peyton Thorne isn't the guy, he's got 3 players waiting in the wings that might be upgrades for the long term. So I like Auburn a lot. I don't think they are viewed at the same level as maybe Tennessee, maybe Missouri, maybe Ole Miss, but they will be better than I think advertised as of right now.
2 years ago, Tennessee made the jump, and heck, they were in the middle of that national, title at least discussion. Last year, Missouri made a jump. They were really, really good. Who makes that jump this year?
I'm going to go bold, I'm going to go brave, and I'm going to go ahead and say, because of somehow people think that he's not a good coach, which is absolutely insane, give me Kentucky. I really like this Kentucky roster and what they were able to bring in this past offseason via the portal. They upgraded their running back room by adding in Chip Trayanum after losing Ray Davis. They bring over Jamori Macklin. You guys know him from UNT. I know him from his time in the SEC so far. He is a vertical playmaker, led Conference USA last year for the Mean Green in receiving yards and yards after the catch. They also upgraded at quarterback with Brock Vandergrift. And the thing about a team like Kentucky, every 3 or 4 years, Mark Stoops is going to get a 10-win season. And I think he's playing with a little bit of hindrance and a bit of animosity because of basically he got Greg Schiano at College Station. The minute that it was announced that he was going to be hired and he was going to be hired by the Aggies, TechSag's message board just went completely berserk. So much so that Ross Stewart couldn't show his face that much longer on campus, and he had to go get the job at Ohio State to be the new athletic director. They did a really good job of upgrading both sides of the football. Their schedule is manageable. I could see them maybe being that team that goes and flirts with that 11 seed, 12 seed in the playoff. I really like Kentucky's roster. I think Bush Handman is a good replacement for Liam Cohen at offensive coordinator. The Wildcats feel like a wild bet, but they are a team that is built to compete alongside every other Tier 2 roster in the SEC.
How hard will it be for Mizzou to sneak up on teams now?
It shouldn't be. Yeah. Honestly, I feel like that I am free. I am like the number one Mizzou fan club lover this year of all the people that talk about the SEC. Because if you look at what they lost, it's a big deal, yeah, but they did a great job in the portal revamping their offensive line. They recently just got Marcus Bryant from SMU. That's a 3-year starter at left tackle, which now allows you to put Caden Green at his natural right tackle position. Marcus Carroll from Georgia State is the new running back that's going to replace Cody Schrader. Nobody is talking about him, and they should, because last season he averaged 6.2 yards per play and was a phenom in the Sun Belt Conference. So I think he can be very similar to that type of player that Schrader was. You bring back both of your 1-2 combination wide receivers and Theo Wease and Luther Burden. They already have a good relationship with Brady Cook. The question that I do have is at that defensive end position, because you are going to lose some players naturally to the draft. Darius Robinson, Jalen Carlisle, and his Rakestraw. But they were able to find a replacement safety. They were able to get a little bit better at linebacker for Tyron Hopper. I don't know who is going to be that edge rusher that can go break past offensive tackles and find their way into the backfield to pressure a quarterback and make a mistake. But I do know that this is a very good roster, and also their schedule is the most relaxed in college football. I mean, they should easily – I don't like writing this early in the season because we're not even at Memorial Day, but if I were to take a permanent marker right now and just throw Mizzou's name somewhere on the 12-team playoff board, I'd feel pretty relaxed, because of as long as they don't have a major injury, they feel like a team that is built not only to build off of last season, but a team that certainly is going to be a playoff team.
Cole, we've had like a 2-year countdown now with Oklahoma and Texas of knowing that they were going to eventually be at this spot, and now it's time to turn the page. Semesters have ended. They're about to be officially, in a matter of weeks, officially a part of the SEC. I was just curious from your standpoint, as somebody who covers the conference, how much influx of maybe conversation and just fan bases you've seen from those two. And obviously they're kind of, a narrative built right now that the Texas has the easier road and the better shot to make an impact early on than Oklahoma does. But just curious of where you fall on that as well.
So I have loved Twitter so much over the last couple of weeks. It's basically the Hatfields and the McCoys between OU and Mizzou Twitter, and that rivalry needs to come back. I am so excited to have that now in the SEC carried on over.
That one gets overlooked a little bit in the grand
really
conversation.
Is.
Yeah,
it really is. But what I find so interesting with Oklahoma, they return basically everybody on defense. It's 80% defensive production rate, and they have 3 wide receivers that can fly down the middle of the field. They can boot, scoot, and boogie like Brooks and Dunn in the open space too with Gavin Stallbrick. So I think that Oklahoma actually is getting a little bit slept on compared to everybody else. But you are right. When it comes down to it, Texas feels like a team that is going to show up to the SEC big boy table and tell one of those contenders that feels like they're about ready to break into the upper echelon, hey, I hope you had your fun. This was really nice that you got to experience what it's like to not be at the kiddie table. Go take your chair and go back with the other losers. I'm taking a firmly planted seat right at the middle ground, because Steve Sarkisian has an anomaly, and he has a baseline and an understanding not only what it means to have a culture, but how to revamp that culture. He was able to lose multiple coaches, players at the transfer portal, countless names to the NFL draft, and Texas still has top 5 odds, according to FanDuel this morning, to win the national championship. That's what great programs do. And they have a good quarterback that can win in Quinn Ewers. He just proved last year, marching into Nick Saban's house and winning by 10 points, that he is good enough. They have a great offensive line. They have an exceptional running back tandem that replaced Jonathan Brooks after he went down with a torn ACL. Defensively, they're going to be good. I really like the addition of Johnny Mason. Remember this name for the rest of the year and tell them that Cole Thompson told you first. Bill Norton is going to be a household figure in the SEC. I love that addition coming on over from Arizona in the second wave of the portal. Their schedule does have a few blips on the radar, but you look at that game, the Red River is going to have much more ambiance than just bragging rights. It's going to determine who really is now the face of the SEC, at least for the first few years. And then that game against Georgia, it's going to be in Austin. It's going to be a madhouse. It's going to be chaotic. But if they win, there's a legit case to say Texas, without missing a beat, shows up in the SEC and basically proves to everybody, not only do they belong, but they're going to be a legit threat to go toe-to-toe. We never got to see the Urban-Saban rivalry. Maybe we could get the Sarkisian-SPART rivalry, which is basically having 2 former Saban assistants go toe-to-toe against each other.
You know, one of the things, Cole, when that announcement came that shocked the college football landscape with Brett Zinnemann's story about Texas and OU, I think at the time everybody went, okay, Oklahoma's going to be okay. Texas, what are you doing? And that seems like that script has flipped just a little bit. Maybe because of the run UT was on last year, but also because of what they have coming back. Would you agree?
A little bit. I'd agree with you on that one, Smokey. You got to realize having a veteran quarterback to set the tone in the SEC is a blessing in disguise. And I think that maybe we would feel a little bit different about Oklahoma if they didn't lose Dylan Gabriel. Now, I want to preface this and say there was a reason Gabriel left. It wasn't NIL. It was because of who is waiting in the wings and what his upside is. Jackson Arnold can be that special quarterback that can lead the Sooners to multiple playoff appearances, maybe even a national title with the right pieces around him. But to have Quinn Ewers coming back with another year in Steve Sarkisian's offense, with the running back tandem that you have, with a very stable offensive line, it does not get much better than that to set a tone in a new era of football. And I love the additions that they were able to bring in. And the thing about Texas that really is important, when you look at Alabama and when you look at Georgia and they go into the transfer portal, they hit certain needs and they look for criteria players, and they can pick and choose who they want to join their roster in the offseason. Texas kind of did that too. When you think about names like Trey Moore coming on over, the AAC Defensive Player of the Year from UTSA, Andrew Makuba, the former Clemson defensive back who won ACC Defensive Rookie of the Year, what they were able to bring in, and Bill Norton and several other defensive linemen, Silas Bolden, who's a really good vertical threat receiver from Oregon State. They basically retooled their entire roster overnight to where, yeah, I mean, Oklahoma, I think, is going to be fine in the long run, but in the short term, Texas can really set a tone for themselves as not only a threat at the SEC level, but if they're at the national one that people are going to have to prepare for. And if they are not on their A game every single week, they're going to lose by double digits, whether it be at home in front of their own fan base or on the 40 acres.
Why did the SEC throw Florida in the wood chipper schedule-wise like they did?
So I personally believe Billy Napier got too big for his britches and told Greg Sankey to shove it one time. And so he said, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. Year 3, I'm going to make sure that you prove that you belong alongside us. Because I don't even think college football Satan himself could look at that schedule and go, yeah, I came up with that. It's baffling. And nobody knows what's going to happen to teams when you play 3 years in advance of preparing. Because Miami's on the schedule. I've said for the last 2 years, I believe Miami of 2024 is going to be the Texas of 2023. They were always waiting to get to year 3. And you look at the names that are brought in, they feel like a team that is supposed to be competing for not only an ACC title, but a college football playoff berth. UCF has done phenomenal work in the transfer portal, especially in the second wave, to go get Jacoby Jones out of Ohio, Penny Boone, who had offers from other major programs. And now you also get KJ Jefferson, who isn't basically Cam Newton, because if I think that there's a certain respect factor we give to Cam for what he did in his 1 year at Auburn, but they do play a similar game style. And we also know that there's a Gus Malzahn special coming at some point where he's going to win a game he shouldn't. It's like wash, rinse, repeat. We know what's happening. And then they have those other trick-up matchups, especially in the second half. Texas with Georgia, they don't play Missouri, which I guess is kind of a blessing. You look at the radar of this team, they don't have a legit actual win that you can just pigeonhole and say, yep, guaranteed victory outside of Stanford in week 2. And I do like Graham Mertz. I love the addition of Chimere Dike from Wisconsin. I think he's going to be a good replacement for Ricky Pearsall. Eugene Wilson, I think, is going to have a phenomenal year. And they did a good job of rebuilding the offensive line, but they also just don't feel like a roster that's really well equipped to contend alongside anybody in the second half. And they're going to have to close out games. The thing with Billy Napier is I believe he is a really good coach. And I think that if Scott Strickland sees progress where the team is going down to the wire and they're holding their own against really everybody, and it only is, let's say, a field goal or one miscue or a muff punt, and that's what leads to losses and they go 6-6 or 5-7, maybe you could go ahead and bring him back. But at the same time, people aren't patient in college football anymore. They want instantaneous results. And it's year 3. And he's got to start proving that this is a team that is actually looking like a year 3 roster. When you go into the spring game and you're having miscues on special teams like you did during the regular season, that's not a team that is showing you that they're actually well equipped to hold their own and show progress.
Hey, Cole, great stuff. Glad we got a hold of you. Glad you're a part of the show. Hope to talk to you again on the show later on down the road. Thanks for your time today. We appreciate it.
Anytime, Smokey. Anytime, guys. Just holler at me. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Cole Thompson, SEC Unfiltered.